What's going on, everybody? My name is C4. Welcome back to the channel. Pull a seat. Get your salads ready. Get everything ready. Sit in for the long haul. Today, we are doing our biggest mock draft of the 2025 NFL draft cycle. It is a full 3-round mock draft. We're going to go through pick by pick by pick in the first round, and then for rounds 2 and 3, we're going to break down team by team by team. And when all is said and done, even though there's no trades in this one, that's so this video is not 7 hours long, you are going to be in love with your draft class. I guarantee it. That is a C4 promise. When all is said and done, 3 picks, 2 picks, however many picks your team has within those first 3 rounds, we're going to hit, it's the open day of baseball, home run dingers like Mark McGwire every single time. So without further ado, at pick 1-1, the Tennessee Titans are going to select Cam Ward. There's not going to be a lot of spicy hot takes, I don't think, in this first round. I feel pretty comfortable with where I kind of match up all the first round prospects. I think for the Titans, the ultimate conversation piece around Cam Ward is what else is going to be your plan at quarterback. I think Cam Ward is favorable and compares favorably to if you're waiting for a quarterback next year. You look at some of the top names there. I don't think any of those guys for sure are better prospects than Cam Ward. Are you going to wait for the Arch Manning sweepstakes? Who even knows if he's going to be good? Who even knows if he's going to be able to reach his ceiling? Who even knows if he's going to declare next year? Arch might wait till 2027 if that's the big fish, if you're a Titans fan, are waiting for at quarterback. So I think right now, you look at Will Levis, you look at Cam Ward, I think the gap between these two is pretty significant. Go get your franchise quarterback and see if you can win with Cam Ward. I think that is a gamble that would be worth paying off for because, I mean, maybe the other scenario would be trading out of this pick. I don't know. And maybe that is a reflection of how you can view Cam Ward's stock. I don't know if there's another team that would want to trade up and, play multiple first-round picks to get him. But at 1-1, I think you can live with that selection if you're a Titans fan. We have Cleveland up at number 2. I've gone back and forth. This has probably been the most alternating mock draft pick I've personally had. I think most people have had because no one knows what they're going to do. I think the pick that makes the most logical sense is Shedeur Sanders. Simply because if you're going to deal with the Deshaun Watson contract and you have a front office and coaching staff that very well could be coaching for their jobs this season. I don't think if they just don't go quarterback here, try to figure it out with Deshaun Watson or whatever the hell, whenever he's available, it's just not going to be good. Take a swing on Shedeur Sanders. I compare him to Bo Nix, where both these guys, in my opinion, are second-round talents, but because they're quarterback and quarterback's a premium position, they're going to go earlier in the draft. It worked out well for the Broncos, and that's what they had to do. They had to deal with Russell Wilson's contract. The only way you deal with that dead money is you have to find a rookie quarterback that you can win with. I think that is very similar to Shedeur Sanders and the Browns quarterback situation. I think talent-wise, I have them graded out very similarly, and I think if you did a redraft of last year's draft, does Bo Nix go top 5? Does he go top 3? Probably goes top 5 a lock going in that position in hindsight. So I think you take that swing, you take that gamble for the Browns, who from a salary cap standpoint, from a coaching staff, job security standpoint, if Shedeur Sanders is promising, that might save everyone's career. If he's as good as Bo Nix, everyone's going to be all great vibes with Stefanski and that Browns team. So let's go Shedeur. Let's see if we can change the vibes up. He is a culture setter for the Cleveland Browns. Number 3, we have the New York Giants. This is another kind of tough one. I think ultimately we'll have a little fun here with Travis Hunter. My logic in this is they're going to view him as a corner that can play some wide receiver. I'm thinking 75-25. Have him line up. Have him be a game changer at the wide receiver spot on select packages. You don't need him to be a wide receiver 1 where some of these teams would. You have Malik Neighbors, so you can have Travis Hunter as your wide receiver 2 gadget guy. Mix him in with Darius Slayton, just got a new contract. You have Wan'Dale Robinson in the slot, but have him primarily be a corner, which is a huge position, especially if Deonte Banks doesn't turn it around and bounce back. There's a lot of uncertainty in that secondary. Travis Hunter can shore that up, and he can give you some juice on the offensive side of the ball. Number 4, with the New England Patriots, an absolute dream scenario for them. They get Abdul Carter, the pass rusher from Penn State. It is time for Mike Vrabel to bring back the reputation of that Bill Belichick Patriots where their defense is always good. And someone like Abdul Carter is going to usher in that area. You look at what they did, spent big money on Milton Williams. I think it's worth the amount of money. Now, there's a gamble because Milton Williams is a rotational pass rusher for the Philadelphia Eagles. Now he's got to be a full-time guy, which my Eagles, just as early as last year, got burned on that by signing Bryce Huff from the Jets, who was great as a rotational guy and then did nothing for us. I don't think it's going to be the case with Milton Williams. He's such a freak of nature athlete. You'll find a way to make it work. But you pair that with Abdul Carter, you get Christian Barmore back healthy, you got Christian Gonzalez. There are some cornerstone pieces on that defense, and Mike Vrabel's going to get those boys playing. Jacksonville pick 5, we're going to go Mason Graham. This is kind of a safe pick. Jags are kind of in a purgatory where I think much like maybe the Titans, they want to trade back at this spot. for a team that's really in love with some of these other players. But I think for the Jags, a 3 technique in Mason Graham, you pair that with Travon Walker, you pair that with Josh Hines-Allen, as the Jags kind of gear up here for a mini rebuild, mini reset, if you will. Those are some very, very key cornerstone pieces on the defensive side of the ball, on that defensive line to build that trench up and be dominant if all those guys can get humming at the same time. We have Vegas at number 6. I know Ashton Jeanty is a popular pick here. I don't think the Raiders have the luxury of going Ashton Jeanty. You go Ashton Jeanty when you're the Eagles. You go Ashton Jeanty, you go running back when everything else is in place, when your offensive line is in place, when you have the wide receivers where the opposing team doesn't have to stack the box. You have a dual threat or a game changer at quarterback. The Raiders do not have that. They do not have the luxury of selecting Ashton Jeanty here. What they do need is T-Mac, Tetriola McMillan, the wide receiver from Arizona. You look at the difference between Seattle with Geno Smith and the Raiders with Geno Smith. In Seattle, he had DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and Tyler Lockett. Right now in Vegas, you kind of Jacoby Myers, not really a needle move, but you have Brock Bowers. You have a tight end. You need more weapons. If you were going to be committing to Geno Smith, and from all accounts, they're going to kind of view him as a multi-year starter for them, go get him a weapon. Go get him a wide receiver one. Go get him a guy that can be a mismatch on the outside. Get you jump balls. Get you some yards. For a big guy, he is really good yards after the catch ability. And with his size, he'll always be a weapon in the red zone. Him and Brock Bowers could be an outstanding duo and weapons. For Geno Smith, for a Raiders team under Tom Brady that I don't think want to tank this year. They want to be competitive. They have a couple win-now moves there. Get a wide receiver one. Jets at number 7. We're going to go with Membu at tackle. Give you 2 plug-and-play franchise-type tackles. Left tackle Fashanu, right tackle Membu. What we know in this pick, could go and consider Tyler Warren, but I think at minimum, you're the Jets. You want to be cautiously optimistic that you can develop Justin Fields as a passer, but you know he can run the football, and he's as dangerous as any running quarterback in the league. You know you can run the football with your 2 running backs. Breece Hall and Braylon Allen can be a really, really good 1-2 punch in the backfield. So we know the Jets, their identity next year offensively is going to be play defense, run the football. And you run the football by dominating the trenches, and Membu gives you a lot of confidence. Him, AVT, you got Fashanu, you got Tippmann at center. Like, those guys there should be a very cohesive unit and give your run game a chance to elevate the program. The first kind of pick is the Panthers. Another potential trade back scenario if we were doing trades. Last mock draft, I made the justification. They go Tyler Warren here because he's the single most game-changing player to help out Bryce Young in year 2, which I think should be their priority. However, that pick was very mixed reviewed. And I think there's also like a value standpoint, not to hold it against Tyler Warren, but like Brock Bowers didn't go, this high. And Brock Bowers is a better prospect than any tight end in this year's class, even though it's a very strong tight end class. So if that's the argument I'm making, let's go something a little different. We'll go Jalen Walker, the pass rusher from Georgia. If you're looking at all the pass rushers right now, Walker, Shamar Stewart, Michael Williams, you're all kind of talking about players that are, you're gambling on the traits that they're going to put all together. And of these 3, I think the versatility in Walker makes it maybe the most interesting out of all the names. I think you want to go production. You could go James Pierce Jr. Wouldn't hate that selection. But I would say as far as like production, which you get in Mike Green and Pierce, projection, which you get in Stewart, Williams, and Walker, I think Walker gives me like he's kind of just barely ahead of those guys. If I was ranking these, and this mock draft here, fellas, is what I would do. I'm not doing a predictive mock draft. I have both, I'd say at least in this situation, Mike Green's a question mark because of the off the field, but I have Pierce and Ezraku over Stewart and Williams. Walker's kind of in that 3 where I think you might feel a little more optimistic. That classic Georgia Bulldog. Can he be like a little bit of a slow burner like Nolan Smith? I don't necessarily love this pick. I don't necessarily can say and scream from the mountaintops this is a slam dunk pick for the Carolina Panthers. But you need to swing on a pass rush. You got to try and find that guy that can replace Brian Burns' production and upside and be that game changer. And I feel like the traits of Jalen Walker might translate best out of these names that are available. Definitely not a slam dunk pick, and I wouldn't hate it if you're a Panther fan. You don't necessarily love this selection. But hey, I went Tyler Warren. You didn't like that. You're in a weird spot. We'll try edge rusher and see what you guys say. New Orleans at pick 9. I'm pretty consistent with this selection. I go Will Johnson, the corner out of Michigan. You lost Lattimore. You lost Debo. You need to get a guy that potentially could be that island corner like a Lattimore, and I think Will Johnson gives you the best shot, especially for a top 10 pick, and I don't think I would hate one bit him being a top 10 selection. We lastly, in the top 10, have the Chicago Bears, and unlike the Raiders, I think the Bears could benefit from a running back in this spot. We know they got Ben Johnson. We know they spent heavily to fix the trenches in free agency. And if you assume Ben Johnson can get that, what they have right now offensively humming, Cole Kmet has tight end 1 upside. You have DJ Moore and Roma Dunze. Those should be a great wide receiver duo. You have DeAndre Swift, who's a great complementary back. You have Caleb Williams, who's a franchise quarterback potential. And you're all assuming that Ben Johnson's going to get him playing his best football. But in case he can't, in case it's maybe not necessarily can't get him playing, but in case he's learning a new offense, maybe it's not going to be an immediate success, being able to rely on a run game of DeAndre Swift and Ashton Jeanty, and you have Jeanty at number 1, I think that makes life a lot easier for the growth and development of Caleb Williams. And then in the event, whenever it happens, you get Caleb Williams humming with the rest of that offense and that offensive line, Jeanty completes that offense. He could be that missing X factor that takes that Bears team from a wild card to a team that can compete and potentially win the division next season. I think the Bears will be a very sneaky competitive team. They get their 2 running backs that work so well for Ben Johnson in Detroit. I love the fit of Jeanty going here. Number 11, the 49ers. Another home run pick for them. They're going to get Will Campbell, the lineman from LSU. We're going to view him as a tackle. I know there's the debate right now about the short arms if he had to kick inside the guard. But I think either or, if worst case, he has to go into guard. That is still a very nice pick for the 49ers. They have to address the offensive line. You start Will Campbell out first as an offensive tackle and hope that it works out. But the fallback plan of being like a Pro Bowl caliber guard doesn't sound too bad at pick 11 either. The Dallas Cowboys can have a little bit of fun with this pick. I had this mock not too long ago. I still like it. I think if you're looking at number 12 for the Dallas Cowboys, for my opinion, you could go Barron at corner. That's a popular mock pick, but I think 12's a little rich for my blood because what if he only ends up being a nickel, right? And nickels have a certain ceiling to their value. And in comparison, he's not a Cooper DeJean level nickel that I would feel in this range in a redraft. Cooper DeJean's probably going closer to top 10 than not. But you could go there. But I think for Dallas, the area that I would want to improve is Dak Prescott. You have got to make that Dak Prescott contract work for you. And the offense that they had last year wasn't good enough. And the offense they have this year is just a lesser version of that offense. Right? Like Brandon Cooks, for whatever it's worth, was their second guy. He's gone. So if you can get Golden in there to help and take some of the pressure off CeeDee Lamb having to be the focal point of the offense. Golden has 4.3 speed. Now, doesn't necessarily translate to his tape. You don't really see a 4.3 guy, but if they could find a way to get his play speed and track speed to line up, he has route running and hands and spectacular catch ability, if you want to break, that most deep threats don't have. Most deep threats are kind of one-trick ponies. I think it was one of those things where Golden was almost a first-round wide receiver before he ran the 4.3. And then he ran the 4.3, and you're like, very, very surprising. So I think you get that for Dallas. You give more weapons to get that offense and that passing attack back to where it was. Even if we're memeing and I'm clowning as an Eagle fan, there was a lot of garbage time stat padding. Dak still was going, 4,000 or 5,000 yards. That's where the Dallas Cowboys need to get back to if you're going to try to justify that contract to Dak Prescott. And getting more weapons for him to throw to is how you do that. The Miami Dolphins at pick 13. I'm going to have them select Walter Nolan, the defensive lineman from Ole Miss. Again, this is my mock draft. We're not following the board. That's on this site. I'm going with the players that I like. And I like Walter Nolan. 5-star traits on an interior pass rusher. The Miami Dolphins have to improve the trenches. They got to get tougher on the trenches. And I think when I look at the defensive side of the ball, guy like Walter Nolan, 5-star traits. Now, he does have a little off the field. There's a reason why some mock drafts have him slipping to late in the first round. I've had scenarios where I'm mocking for the Eagles and he's there, which would be a slam dunk, which I would love that selection. But I think at 13, if you're the Miami Dolphins, swing for the fences here. Maybe there's a little bit of projection. Maybe there's a little bit, you got to get him playing his best football. But I think if it all works out, he has a chance to be the best D lineman, interior guy. I would not be shocked if 3 years from now, if you said Walter Nolan has had a better career than Mason Graham at this point. It would not be shocking. Colts at 14. They're running this one up. They're getting Tyler Warren at tight end. I know it's kind of a lazy pick at this point, but they desperately need tight end. They get their best option here in Tyler Warren, their first choice, their pick of the litter for whoever ends up being their quarterback between Anthony Richardson and Danny Dimes. That's probably a dream pick. There's a couple of dream picks in here, I think, for fan base. I think Warren to the Colts would certainly be one. We have the Atlanta Falcons up next at 15. And I'm going to go with a don't overthink it pick. I'm going to go James Pierce Jr. You're going to look at Shamar Stewart. You have all these sites, all these guys getting picked ahead. I think of these guys, Ezra would be maybe the guy I would consider maybe over him. But James Pierce, weird vert aside, tested out the gym at the combine. So he's in line with your Shamar Stewart in a ways. He's also been the most productive SEC pass rusher over the last 2 years. Let's just not overthink it. Can we get the guy that's a physical specimen and has proven SEC production versus the guy that you're gambling that his non-production in college will be fixed in the NFL versus a guy that wasn't as freaky of an athlete as we thought. Red flags in Mike Green. Let's just not overthink it. I think James Pierce Jr. would be a fun, nice, exciting pass rush pick for the Atlanta Falcons. 16, we have the Arizona Cardinals on the clock, and I'm going to have them select Kenneth Grant, the nose tackle from Michigan. I think there's other options here. I think D-line and improving their pass rush is an area that they could continue to double. Obviously, you want to see development of Darius Robinson. You bring in Josh Sweat in free agency. But I think for me, Kenneth Grant not only will be a day one starter on the interior of that defensive line, he'll be like kind of your Jordan Davis for, your Jonathan Gannon, what he had in Philadelphia. But I think Kenneth Grant not only improves their nose tackle spot and their run defense immediately, he was, if you're comparing to Jordan Davis as like the last big, highly picked nose tackle, he's a better pedigree as far as rushing the passer is concerned. And I think he makes everyone else better on that defensive front. I think that's going to be the true value. He's going to be kind of the missing chemistry piece that's going to have Darius Robinson playing at a better level. That's got to have Josh Sweat playing at his highest level, the Super Bowl run level that he had for the Eagles last season. So it's kind of a glue guy on that defensive line, if you will, as well as an impact day one starter. The Bengals at 17. This pick's going to be made under the assumption that, hey, even if they bring back Trey Henderson, which seems like that's where they're leaning, the red flags are fine. There's going to be no suspensions. They're going to go get Mike Green, another proven pass rusher in this class. I think if the red flags are a considerable concern, you could just swap in Ezraku here in that role. But Mike Green, proven pass rusher, not gambling on whether or not you can develop this guy and get him to reach the ceiling. You're just getting a guy that you know right away will be a very nice finesse pass rusher, a pass rush specialist. Put him on the other side of Trey Hendrickson and get some friggin' pressure. Because I think with how they paid their team, how they're structuring, with all the money on offense, the Bengals from here on out need to just get rookie contracts of players that are playing better than the rookie contracts on the defensive side of the ball for the next couple seasons. Now here's maybe a little outside the box thinking for Seattle. I'm going to select Colson Loveland, the tight end out of Michigan. I know they brought back Noah Fant on essentially what is a one-year deal. Loveland is a different beast. Loveland is a route runner. He might be one of the smoothest route runners in the entire of the class. Tight end, wide receiver, indifferent of that position. And if you have Sam Darnold, if you can have Loveland, who's an outstanding route runner, and JSN, who can get open and be maybe a little bit more of a field stretcher this year, I think you're going to have to open and expand JSN's role a little bit. It just gives two really, really easy targets for Sam Darnold to get into a rhythm. I think that's going to be very important. You're going to have that drop-off. You like what you saw in Darnold, but you don't have, because of how their offseason's gone, you don't have the Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson that Darnold was able to utilize last year with the Vikings. You just don't have that. So what you do need is try to cultivate an environment of similar style players, guys that make it easy and life easy on Sam Darnold. I think Colson Loveland would give you the most value of doing that at pick 18. More so value than going on the interior of the offensive line here with like a Booker or a Kelvin Banks. The Tampa Bay Bucks at 19. Hate this pick as an Eagle fan because I'd love for him to fall. I'm going to select Jahad Campbell. I think you can look at the Bucks defense right now. They need linebacker. They need a pass rusher. And I feel like you kind of get two birds stoned at once, if you will, to quote the Trailer Park Boys, with a Jahad Campbell. No one really knows what his best position is going to be. Gives a little bit of like Zach Bond vibes. And Zach Bond was probably, I'm not even going to say probably, I'm going to bias say Zach Bond was the best linebacker in football last year, and that is exactly what he brought to the table. He can rush the passer, he can drop off ball, he can go sideline to sideline, cover tight ends, cover running backs, do all these things at a high level, and I believe that is the ceiling of Jahad Campbell, and he's a better athlete than a Zach Bond. So I think someone like Todd Bowles would find the best way to maximize the talent of Jahad Campbell, and he can wear a lot of different hats and fix a couple different positions on the defense for the Bucks. 20 with the Denver Broncos. This has kind of been a pick that I've had for the last couple of mock drafts. I just love the fit. I was selecting Marion Hampton, the running back from North Carolina. I think a reason to make this pick is I don't really love the board elsewhere to be like, oh, well, that's what they should do. That's a more logical pick. I think they need that game changer. This is a win now team. After having the success of Bo Nix, the time is ticking for this team to go on a run while you're on the rookie contract of Bo Nix. So what is the missing piece? What is the game changer? You do not have that Alvin Kamara. I'm not saying Hampton stylistically is Kamara, but you don't have that running back that could take the pressure out the run game, the pass game, and make plays. And I feel like that is exactly what you get in a Marion Hampton. Marion Hampton can catch 30, 40 balls in the backfield, but between the trenches, he can pass block his ass off. He is a day one, 3-down running back. Immediately is going to contribute to the stock up of the Denver Broncos next season as far as being a playoff contender. And I think that is going to be maybe the logic that Sean Payton is going to see with the given board right now. It's like, well, you know what? I see I see a guy that could probably get 12, 13, probably 1,500 yards from scrimmage for us next year. Dozen plus touchdowns. Like, we don't have that guy on our roster right now. Javonte Williams couldn't be that guy. Jaleel McLaughlin might never be that guy. Or the other dude, Estime. But you get Hampton, that is a proven RB1. Pittsburgh Steelers at number 21. Interesting board. I would have them go... Ooh. I'll go Jahdae Barron at corner. It's between him and Harmon. But I think you still got a little tread on that defensive line, right? It's going to be a team. Are they going to get Aaron Rodgers? Are they not? Like, if they get Aaron Rodgers, they're going to be probably trying to be a little more all-in next year. And if you want to be a little more all-in, then you can get by on that defensive front. But that secondary outside of Joey Porter Jr., you got, that dude from West Virginia. I don't know why I can't remember his name. Benny something. Beanie Bishop in the nickel. And you Gable, that Barron can be an outside guy for you. I think he could. I think worst case, you just find a way. You just view him as a defensive back and get him on the field. But corner is a need. There's not a lot of outside corners. I think he can play on the outside corner. He's a very physical player, Pittsburgh Steeler type player. And I would kind of view this as like solidifying that secondary, have him be a tandem with Joey Porter Jr., and get that back end of the defense playing at a high level, a competitive level. I think Barron's a pro-ready player that's going to be able to contribute right away for the Pittsburgh Steelers in their hunt to make another playoff appearance. Chargers at 22. This is another interesting one. I think for the Chargers, I would take the gamble here on Shamar Stewart. Now, this is just maybe wishful thinking, putting my Madden hat on. I'd like to think that you have your understudy for Khalil Mack. You got one more year to Khalil Mack, brought him back on a one-year deal. You have Tui Pelotu that's going to be able to contribute right away, and then have just Shamar Stewart be part of that rotation. It's going to probably take two people to take up what Joey Bosa was able to do when he was healthy. But long-term, with the freak athleticism that Stewart has, you have a great DC there that should be able to develop him. You have Khalil Mack, which he can learn everything from Khalil Mack, pick his brain, and assuming that Mack is done at the end of this season. If Shamar Stewart can take that learning, get that coaching, and be in that environment, I think will help him reach his ceiling, you have a potential freak of nature on your hands if you are the Chargers at 22. 23, the Green Bay Packers. All right, well, I think for the Packers, I would be looking here, and I would go get Emeka Egbuka. Finally, a first-round wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers. I think, given the board, looking at where else they would want to go, probably not in love with the corners that are still there. Maybe Hairston. I do like Hairston. But until Jair Alexander's traded, you kind of got to act on assumption. Like maybe that bridge has not been burned and it'll be smoothed out just a little bit. You have your edge rush here, but it's like more kind of project edge rushers, which, I mean, you could go Ezraku. I don't think that would be brutal value either. But I think, all things considered, an exciting splash wide receiver in Egbuka that's safe, a reliable player. You can move Jaden Reed, use his athleticism a little bit more on the outside. You have Watson, if he comes back healthy on the outside. Dobbs, kind of an all-rounder. And I think it just gives you that much more of an incentive to, we know we can run the football. We know we have Josh Jacobs, but how can we get more consistency out of Jordan Love? Cut down on some of the turnovers. He was kind of, Jordan Love was hot and cold. There's some games like, oh, goddamn, baller. Other games are just like, okay, just pick turnover machine. Someone like Egbuka that's a very pro-ready, high-floor type wide receiver prospect, I think that'd make a lot of Green Bay Packers fans happy. 24, we have the Minnesota Vikings. I'm going to have the Vikings go on the offensive line and select Tyler Booker, the guard from Alabama. I think right now, shifting towards J.J. McCarthy, you got to give him the best shot at having success. And it's kind of getting into the Joe Burrow-Bengals debate right now, where you have Joe Burrow, you have the great weapons on the outside, which is what McCarthy's going to have in Addison and Justin Jefferson. But is he going to have the offensive line, especially for a rookie, that's going to be able to hold up and give him time to find those guys? And I think at tackle, you love the tackles. But in the interior, they've kind of lost some bodies there. Lost their center. You can always look at a immediate left guard upgrade, which is I think Tyler Booker is going to be. So you beef up the interior to help make life easier as you go through the growing pains of J.J. McCarthy. Houston Texans at 25. And I'm going to have them select I don't want to say it's my favorite tackle in the class, but he might be my favorite. Gun to my head, if I had to take a tackle, I would say as far as value, because I think he is going to fall. I think he's my favorite tackle in the class in relation to where I think he'll get drafted, and that is Josh Simmons out of Ohio State. I think you're getting a guy that if he didn't have the injury at Ohio State, he could, I think with the concerns of Will Campbell and kind of the uncertainty of Memba just kind of came out of nowhere with the strong combine, I think there's a shot that if a healthy Simmons, no injury, might be the first tackle off the board. If you're the Texans, there you go. Scratch your head at moving Larry's. You had a terrible offensive line last year, and then you shipped off kind of the good guys. So you replenish that. You find a solution a little bit to improve a horrific offensive line if it works. It's a gamble, but it seems like he'll be ready for camp. It seems like there's not going to be any downtime. He's already kind of working out in off-field drills at the pro day for Ohio State. You get Simmons there, and the idea he will be your Laramie Tunsil successor. Rams at number 26. And I'm going to have them get Maxwell Hairston, the corner out of Kentucky. 6 feet tall, proven SEC production, ran a 4.2. Now, he is kind of like the Matthew Golden, if you will, where it doesn't necessarily show that track speed on tape. But I liked him as a fringe first rounder before he ran a 4.2. And then you see that and you show those traits. Those usually translate fairly well in the NFL. And speed, especially for young corners, can compensate for the lack of technique and the growing pains that will come in the NFL. And I think for the Rams, that is a not particularly fast secondary. And I think speed is something they would like to beef up on the defense. And you get that in spades with Hairston. Baltimore at 27. Here is just a classic Baltimore Ravens selection. Mykel Williams, the edge rusher out of Georgia. A traitsy player that might not be pro ready, but just put him in the machine. That is the developmental cycle of Raven pass rushers. Maybe it might be a little bit slower, like a Jabo who's coming off that injury, but maybe it'll be like, oh wait, we're right away. Got a little bit of a project guy, but now you feel and you pencil him in as like one of the best pass rushers on their team and a guy that you think, especially in Oweh's case, it could be a double-digit guy next season. I feel like a Mykel Williams just throws his name into that hat, have him part of that rotation. It's a classic Baltimore Ravens selection, and it's been a consistent way that they've been able to just keep pumping out pass rushers year in, year out. Detroit at 28, they're probably pissed off because they would have liked Mykel Williams, but they still get a really good pass rusher. I'm going to select Donovan Eziraku from Boston College. I think he's a really high floor type pass rusher. I watched him a couple times last year. More so I was being a degenerate gambler and gambling on Bill O'Brien's Boston College. He stood out every single game. As a run defender, as a pass rusher, he was unblockable, an absolute monster. Tested maybe slightly better than expected. Not a freak of nature type athlete, but you're getting a more technical, more pro-ready pass rusher. I think that's what Detroit needs. Detroit doesn't need that slow burn, maybe this year, maybe next year type guy that could be like a Mykel Williams. Get a guy that immediately, assuming that you get Aiden Hudson healthy week one, that can play on the other side and affect the pass. And I think that's exactly what Eziraku could bring to that defense. 29, we have the Washington Commanders. I think they're going to stay on the pass rush front as well. A run on edges. They're going to get Nick Scouton, the edge rusher from Texas A&M. I think when you look at that defense, on a little bit of a change into the guard there, but do they have a guy on that defense that has a ceiling of being a game wrecker? Maybe on the defensive front, you get rid of Jonathan Allen. You still got Payne. You still got, Jerzon Newton's going to have to step up. He could be a really nice player, but as far as pure pass rushers that, 3-4 years down the line, it's a question mark. I think edge is a need. I think when you look at the Commanders, you can make an argument edge is their biggest need. And someone like Scouton at 285, big, long pass rusher, good run defender as well right now. I think you're going to get a guy that maybe will never be double digits, but I think you're going to get a guy that will be probably close to it and a plus run defender, which if you, you got to stop Saquon Barkley and Eagles somehow, and affecting the run game is how you do it. I think you can get that in Scouton and upside as well. Buffalo at number 30. This is interesting if you are a Bills fan because you look at, similar needs. They could use pass rush. They could use a nose tackle, a corner on the board. But what I'm going to have them go is go get Derek Harmon on the defensive line, a 3 technique that could just continue to, strengthen those trenches a little bit. You get Ed Oliver, who's a dog, and I think him and Harmon's a little bit bigger. Ed Oliver's like sub 300 pounds, like 295. Harmon's 315, somewhere in that range. Was decent at Michigan State, had a huge year, kind of cashing out as an Oregon Duck last year. His stock's high. He tested very well, one of the more athletic interior defensive linemen in this class. And I think you get some pass rush juice out of him as well. And McDermott's going to be able to love having him a part of that rotation. Kansas City at 31. They're going to select Kelvin Banks at tackle. Tackle is without a shadow of doubt the biggest need for the Kansas City Chiefs, especially after that Super Bowl. Their offensive line's weaker. They were terrible last year, got dominated by the Eagles, and then they just traded away their best lineman in Joe Thuney. And I don't know why they just have this assumption that Kingsley Suamadia is going to pan out. He was not good at all. Now he's young, and he is kind of like a developmental guy, but you were just assuming right now, he could play tackle maybe, or maybe we'll play him at guard, a position that he's never played ever. He was strictly a tackle in college at Oregon and BYU. So you're at A lot of gamble. And you get someone like Banks who, like, maybe kind of similar vibe as Will Campbell, where, like, is he too short to play tackle? Maybe at best at guard. I kind of feel like Kansas City, at either way, if he ends up being a guard or a tackle, we're going to be very happy because they have to beef up the offensive line regardless, and he probably gives the best shot. And we finish up in the first round by Philadelphia Eagles. Now, this was a mock draft. Someone did it on Reddit, where, like, you got fans of every team. They kind of went pick by pick. And when it was the Eagles, the board looks similar to this. I said, let's go Luther Burden. Screw it. We're not going to pick up the fifth-year option of Jahan Dotson. Burden, game changer. Burden also can play, like, on the outside. Like, it would just kind of, like, completely overpower the offense for the Philadelphia Eagles. But I think with the way that the board fell here, we got to go Malachi Stark. Sucks as a Canadian. I'd love to see Sidney Brown get a chance. I just don't know if Sidney Brown... I would love to. I'd love to be wrong on this and eat my words. And we say we don't go safety and Sidney Brown gets a chance because I think there's potential there. Sidney Brown, he was absolutely a fan favorite player. Big-time athlete, big-time hitter, big-time tone setter. But he kind of plays recklessly, which is why we like him. I don't think Vic Fangio likes that very much. Vic Fangio likes his players to play within structure. And when we watched at the Combine, everyone was wowing over Nick Amenwuri and his testing. Around the 40, the vertical jump. As soon as it came to the on-field drills, Malachi Stark stood out like the equivalent, the opposite. Whereas Amenwuri was in shorts testing, everyone was like, holy shit. When Starks was going through the drills, everyone was like, holy shit. This guy is head and shoulders above every other safety that was out there. And I think Starks for the Philadelphia Eagles is exactly what Vic Fangio wants in a safety. And that would be a nice pick for the Eagles, even if it comes at the risk of stunting an opportunity for Sidney Brown to become a starter. So there we go, fellas. That is the first round. I'm going to go on, and I'm going to complete the second and third round, and then we're going to go by team and break down how I handled all those selections. All right, so running down, we go alphabetical for the second and third rounds. Wasn't too many teams I wasn't able to kind of get and address BPA and kind of mesh the needs as well. So for the Cardinals, we get Jonah Savanea at guard to beef up the interior, and Carson Schweinsteiger as one of the top day 2 interior linebackers. Could probably take over Kaiser White's role. The Atlanta Falcons at pick 46. I went best corner available, small school prospect. Hit on one last year in Quinyon Mitchell out of Toledo. Siobhan Revelle coming off an injury. Tape looked pretty good. And anytime you're at a small school, you need to dominate. And he could be the next. You got Sauce Gardner, small school corner, pans out. Quinyon Mitchell, small school corner, pans out. Revelle maybe have been a first rounder if he didn't have the injury concerns. But I'm pretty confident he's going to be a damn fine corner for the Atlanta Falcons. We have the Baltimore Ravens, who also get a corner at pick 59 in Trey Amos out of Ole Miss. And they double up in the second. You get a complimentary option to Kyle Hamilton, a cover guy in Billy Bowman, who has a nose for the football and to get some turnovers. The Buffalo Bills, kind of a similar approach. A lot of day 2 corners. Azareé Thomas from Florida State has some nice outside capabilities, especially they traded away Kyer Elam, so they need a little bit more depth to that secondary. And then they add some speed at wide receiver in Isaiah Bond. Didn't shatter the 40-yard dash record like he had hyped up before the 40-yard dash at the Combine, but still brings game-changing speed at the position to capitalize on Josh Allen's cannon. For the Carolina Panthers, my next day 2 picks were to try to help Bryce Young. I debated doing that at 8, but at 57 we get the Canadian Alec Aomanor, who is just a tough-ass wide receiver, tested out very well as a 9+ RAS score. And then we get Gunnar Helm at tight end, who's he's one of those guys that we're all kind of looking at the pro day because he hurt himself at the Combine, but he was an emerging weapon on that Texas Longhorn offense last year, and I think he could be a day 1 starter at tight end for the Panthers. For the Chicago Bears, get an absolute value here in Braden Swinson, who I have a first-round grade on at pass rush out of LSU. We get Andrew Mukubu, who is my second favorite safety in the class after Malachi Starks. I do have him ahead of Nick Amenwuri, just even so slightly. I think he complements that safety room. I think you get a succession in place to Kevin Byard. Maybe even take over some stats. But Byard was a serviceable veteran for you guys. Played a lot better for the Bears last year than he did for my Eagles the years prior. And then we get a kind of developmental tackle here in Cameron Williams, who you may be able to push inside. He's a gigantic human being, like a 300 and almost 40-pound lineman. But that is just kind of BPA to beef up the offensive line for the Bears just a little bit and give them some depth. For the Cincinnati Bengals, we get the freak of nature, Nick Amenwuri at safety at pick 49. Got to get creative on how you're going to utilize him. That's kind of the big question mark, is where's going to be his best position. And you got to put him in a position and place to thrive, because he is a little bit of a stiffer athlete. Pause. They got to work on that. Then we get Shamar Turner for a 3 technique to kind of revamp the defense. But all defense, I'd be very surprised if the Bengals go offense in their first 3 picks. For the Cleveland Browns, we go Ariante Ursary with the first pick of the second round at offensive tackle. We get Caleb Johnson, very talented running back as well, to take over. I think he could be RB1 sooner than later. And then I get Emory Jones here. It's uncertain whether or not he's going to be a tackle or guard at the next lineman, so I kind of just view that as a lineman pick. And I like to say either or, if it's guard or have him compete for that right tackle spot. I mean, Conklin, is what it is. The dude from Ohio State, DeJuan Jones, he looked like he was promising, and then not so much. So I think you can never have enough linemen for the Cleveland Browns there. Add some fresh bodies. For the Dallas Cowboys, we grab the running back at pick 44 in Travion Henderson, the dash to the smash. That was Quinshon Judkins and that very good running back duo for Ohio State. And then we get Jacob Parrish, very athletic, like a high 9 Raz nickel corner, and he should be able to compete for that Jordan Lewis role. Denver Broncos, we have at 51, get Elijah Arroyo, the deep threat at tight end. He can absolutely spread the field. And then we get Chris Paul Jr., one of the most sure tackling linebackers in the class out of Ole Miss. Detroit Lions get a nice 3 technique in Darius Alexander, win now type player. He's an older prospect, be 25, I believe, at the beginning of the season. But for an interior pass rusher, I mean, that's a guy that's going to be able to contribute, and a guy that's going to be able to be a part of that D-line rotation. And then we go wide receiver at 102, getting Torrey Holt, I don't know what he ran. He ran like a 4.3, low 4.4, something like that. Had a 9+ Raz at the Colorado State Pro Day, 6'2", and he was an absolute dog for them. A guy that has a 1,000-yard potential in college football. I think that could translate sooner than later in the NFL. Green Bay, in the second round, we get Prenselli Umamalayan from Ole Miss, formerly my Florida Gators. I don't want to say mean things, so hey, I think it'll be a nice part of a pass rush rotation as a rookie. And then you get yourself a little bit of an athlete at corner. Zoff Frazier had some turnovers at UTSA. 6'3", not quite Tariq Woolen, but pretty close, similar style player. And, they kind of showed what they like in corner with Eric Stokes. And this is kind of just a cheaper version of trying to get a height, weight, speed corner that could potentially pan out. Houston Texans go and get Trey Harris at pick 58. Need to kind of revamp that wide receiver room a little bit. Doesn't look like you're going to have Tank Dell anytime soon. I don't know if he's going to be fully healed next season. Probably not. You lost Stephon Diggs. So I think going to get a proven 1,000-yard SEC wide receiver at 58 would be some good value. You got Jackson Slater at center. He tested out very, very well. A lot of great measurables to translate as a interior lineman, likely a center. Had some competition with Juice Scruggs. And then we got a linebacker in Stutzman who tested way better than anyone expected. Kind of had a typecast, I think, coming into the combine. And then he ran like a 4.5. And was like, oh, okay. Has some missed tackle issues. But I think he's a guy that lunch pail attitude of DeMeco Ryans, I think he'd mesh well there. For the Colts, at 45, we get Donovan Jackson, the very versatile lineman from Ohio State, can pretty much play anywhere on the offensive line. So that versatility is key. And then we get Demetrius Knight, who had a huge year in the SEC for South Carolina, to add some depth to that Colts linebacker core that had some turnover this offseason. For the Jacksonville Jaguars, and a steal at pick 36, I have a first-round grade on Benjamin Morrison, the corner from Notre Dame, and that is a position that the Jags need to definitely improve. I got Jalen Royals at wide receiver, tested very well, brings some deep threat speed, and a little bit more stability outside of just Brian Thomas being the go-to guy. They got rid of Christian Kirk. So I do think they need to kind of replenish that wide receiver room a little bit, and Royals is a value pick in this year's class. And then we get Kevin Winston Jr., whose stock probably would be higher if he didn't have the bad injury at Penn State last year. But he's a guy that had, certainly in the conversation of a top 5 safety body of work in college in the class. Big-time hitter, big-time player in run defense. And I think at 88, that brings some good value to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Kansas City, they get Big Alfred College out of Texas on the defensive line. They get Jack Sawyer as a pass rush to kind of help that D-line rotation. Then you get Wyatt Millam. He's listed as a tackle, but I think a lot of people project him to kick inside at guard. I think every opportunity Kansas City has this draft to improve their offensive line, they need to do so. For the Vegas Raiders, we get Quinshon Judkins at running back. So they get their running back, not quite Ashton Genty, but I don't think there's going to be, I think most Raider fans, you'd rather get your wide receiver and running back this way versus going, say, Genty and then dealing with whatever wide receiver pool that was available at 37. I think Judkins immediately is an RB1, and that's a guy that I'm going to be aggressively trying to get in fantasy football if that scenario played out. And then we got Jordan Hancock, the corner out of Ohio State, had an insane pro day at Ohio. I love the tape. He's a guy that can play nickel. I think he has like the dimensions that he can play on the outside. Maybe plug him as a nickel right now. I know it's a D+, but he has like a 9.7, 9.8 RAS. Jumped out of the gym, 40+ inch vertical, 4.3 speed. I love the tape before I saw the testing. I think he's going to be a big riser the closer we get to the draft in the secondary as far as corners are concerned. For the Rams, we get Barrett Carter. Unfortunately, tested a little bit below expectation, so his draft stock's trending a little bit down, but he did more than enough good things, especially last year, man. When I was watching a lot of Clemson to see what Philly was really getting in Jeremiah Trotter Jr., Barrett Carter was kind of the linebacker that was popping a little bit. He has some nice coverage ability, and he cleans up some missed tackles here and there, but I think he'd be an interesting fit at linebacker for the Rams. And then at 101, they take a flyer, man. I think it is worth to, get a developmental option behind Stafford. I think you can live with Quinn Ewers at 101. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, but at least you have an interesting option for however long, maybe a year or two more of Stafford, because like Stafford said, they're never going to be bad enough to get like a successor right away without trading a bunch of capital. We all know the Rams don't really care about their draft picks, but I do think Quinn Ewers at that spot represents some pretty good value for the LA Rams. For the Chargers at 55, they get their tight end in Harold Fannin Jr., put up video game numbers at Bowling Green last season, and then they get a 3-tech. And I mean, you probably have him. I'm not gonna say you outright want to have him play nose there a little bit, but I think Joshua Farmer, last year's tape of Florida State, he was one of my favorite D tackles in the class. This year, pretty much everyone on Florida State stock was going down. That team was an absolute dumpster fire, but I do like Joshua Farmer, and I think he'd be a great bit of the Chargers D-line rotation. For the Miami Dolphins at 48, we have them go with a Raz monster and Tate Ratledge, the guard out of Georgia, one of the best athletic testing guards that we've seen in the last 20 years at the Combine, so that kind of checks everything that I think McDaniel would like to look for in a player. Then we get Ozzie Trapillo, the 6'7" tackle from Boston College, especially with the uncertainty of Terran Armstead, of looking like he is retiring. I think improving the offensive line and doubling up there in day 2 for the Dolphins would be a wise decision. For the Minnesota Vikings, only had one day 2 pick, and we get Cam Scatterbo at running back. Imagine having that. You can have Aaron Jones kind of be your do-it-all pass catcher, and then when it's time to bring the hammer, you bring the hammer in Cam Scatterbo. I think he'd be immediately a fan favorite for the Minnesota Vikings. Board didn't really fall out for them to grab a corner at that spot, so we kind of just went BPA and trusted the board that we had. For the New England Patriots, we go tackle Josh Connerly from Oregon, who has some first-round vibes right now, first-round discussion. So for him in the top of the second round, that is certainly a position the Patriots need to address, is the offensive line. We get a big-time athlete in Jalen Noel at 69 out of Iowa State. 4'3", 40+ inch vertical, just super dynamic in space. Now, this is one of those ones where it's like I'm putting a big athlete and a game changer, how he lines up and how he meshes well with what the Patriots currently have at wide receiver. Maybe not the best fit, but I think as far as getting an impact at wide receiver, he was the best value there for the Patriots. And then at 77, we get interior help in Miles Frazier out of LSU. I think very reliable. I don't believe he allowed a sack the last 2 years for the Tigers. And the Patriots definitely need probably multiple offensive line picks sooner than later in the 2025 draft. The New Orleans Saints, we get Landon Jackson, a pass rush help at number 40, 6'7", 280 pounds, unique body type. And I think that, maybe not double-digit sack ceiling, but I think he's going to be a guy that's going to be a complete, do the ugly work type pass rusher. Maybe ends up being a better run defender than pass rusher, but add some stability there on that defensive line. We go Marcus Mbao at guard, and then we get kind of something that I always feel like the Saints always have, regardless of who their coach is going to be, that height, weight, speed, deep threat, MVS type player, and you get that in Dante Thornton, 6'4", ran the 4.3 at the Combine. Stylistically, it's what the Saints love to get in their wide receivers. The Jets at 42 go Tyleek Williams. That's a great value pick on that defensive line. Him playing next to Quinnen Williams is going to be very exciting for Jet fans. And then at 73, we replace Tyler Conklin at tight end. You get Terrence Ferguson, who's my favorite tight end in this class. I don't have him at 1 or anything like that, but as far as non-Tyler Warren, non-Colson Loveland, I like Ferguson almost as much as any tight end in this class. Tested very well, and I think there's a guy there and a case to be made that he's going to be a better pro than he was a college football player. The New York Giants at 34, we go Gray Zabel, the lineman at North Dakota State, can pretty much play everywhere on the offensive line. The Giants need help a lot of spots across the offensive line. To the fact that there's a couple different opportunities for him to find his way in that starting lineup, brings some value. In the third round, I felt like that was a fine time to grab Jackson Dart as your developmental quarterback option. And you're not, making such a significant investment that if things don't work out this year, you can't go get your franchise quarterback early, sooner than later next season. But it just gives you a chance to see maybe he could be that guy. Maybe not. But if he's not, it's not that big of a pick if it's a swing and a miss. And if he is, and you start to see a guy that could develop into something, then you look like absolute geniuses with this selection. And then 99, we get Omar Norman Lott from Tennessee to be a 3-tech and give some much-needed depth to that rotation after Sexy Dexy. For my Philadelphia Eagles, kind of consistent with how I've mocked for the Eagles. When I just do Eagles-only mock drafts, I go Mason Taylor at 64. Seems like the vibes around Dallas Goedert for the Philadelphia Eagles aren't strong right now, as much as I would rather just keep Goddard for another year. This pick here, very similar to what we did when we drafted Dallas Goedert, when we had Zach Ertz on the roster. Zach Ertz was literally breaking records, single-season tight end reception records, and we drafted a tight end in the second round. Could line up this way. I love the ceiling of Mason Taylor. He'll only be 20 years old as a rookie, and a high ceiling as like a complete tight end. Philly, a lot of people want to mock like Harold Fannin to the Eagles because we got Bowling Green's head coach on our staff, but like Fannin's kind of more of like a slot wide receiver than he is a tight end. We need a complete guy. We need a guy that can chip in and, much like Dallas Goedert, be a receiver and a blocker, and I think you get that in Mason Taylor. Then at 96, we get Josiah Stewart, the pass rusher from Michigan. Kind of Brandon Grammy in regards to like the metrics are great. His pass rush win rate are great. Maybe the sacks aren't quite there. Maybe he's not a freak type athlete, but I feel like that is the kind of guy, productive player where the underlying stats check out and you're going to gamble that Vic Fangio could put him in the right position to make some plays. And I mean, he's a pretty fun player to watch as well for what I saw at Michigan. For the Pittsburgh Steelers, at pick 83, I go CJ West. We get some depth on the interior. He tested a lot better than expected. A 9+ RAS player. Absolute dog in the running game. I love him. He's one of my favorite players. I've had him go to the Eagles in many of my Eagles mock drafts as of late. He ends up going to the Steelers here, and I think he's a guy that would certainly be versatile, and you could line him up in a couple different spots on that D-line, but almost 320 pounds. Again, is the plan always going to be keep Keanu Benton on the inside, or can he play one of the DN spots? And you maybe move CJ West as a nose tackle. The options are there. It is better to have options than to not. For the San Francisco 49ers at pick 43, we go JT Tuimaleau, the former 5-star recruit out of Ohio State, to get a little bit of pass rush juice. We go TJ Sanders at 75 as a 3-technique interior pass rusher, showing a little TLC on that defense. Sanders, will be a replacement for the Grave Digger, who didn't. It just, it is what it is. Didn't work out with Hargrave, so let's get someone that's way cheaper. That might give you a little bit more upside. And then at 100, we go Jack Betch, versatile player. A lot of comps of him to potentially like this year's Puka Nacua. Awesome story. If you watch the Super Bowl, you know his story with his brother. But then he had the huge Senior Bowl moment, which is awesome. But you know what? He's not just a sympathy story. He's an outstanding football player, tough football player, run after the catch, very physical. And I feel like, you're losing a little bit of that from like what you had in peak Debo, and you get some of those traits back in Jack Betch. For the Seattle Seahawks, we go Jaden Higgins out of Iowa State. 6'4", height, weight, speed type player. Underlying stats are very good. Just, one of those offenses for Iowa State that just wasn't going to put up gaudy numbers. But he's a guy that most people are kind of banking on right now. Will have more productive NFL career than he did in college. We got Jarrett Wilson as an interior lineman at 52. Likely will be a center. We have Garrett Dillinger, who tested off the chart at LSU's Pro Day. Versatile lineman. Played a bunch of different spots across the interior. Has really good numbers from LSU. Didn't give a whole lot of sacks. His versatility and his athleticism, I think he's going to be a riser from the Pro Day cycle. And then at 92, just took a flyer, much like Quinn Ewers. You're not risking a whole lot if it doesn't work out at pick 92 for Jalen Milroe, but I think you need to take a swing, and I think this could be a favorable landing spot because you have Darnold for the time being. Is Darnold going to be the solution? He's going to be the franchise quarterback in Seattle? Probably not. But at least you get to see Jalen Monroe and you get to develop him for a couple seasons to see if maybe he will be your guy, an eventual franchise starter. We have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who at 53, I get height, weight, speed, which is what they've shown to like at corner for their corner players in Darian Porter, almost as a perfect 10 RAS, one of the best athletes we've seen at corner in a minute. And then we get Jordan Birch, another big-time athlete, pass rusher, will likely play on that defensive front. He's like, 290-ish? But it is a scheme fit for the Bucs to give them some pass rush help on that front three. Tennessee Titans, probably the best draft I think you could ask for if you're a Titan fan. Don't have a lot of draft picks, but at 35, they get Luther Burden, who I have as a first rounder, just falled out, especially late first round. Not a lot of those teams need a wide receiver, but getting Burden, he's that guy that's the Debo type player. He's the gadget player that can play in the slot. I think he's big time, one of the best yards after catch wide receivers that we've seen in the last couple years of the college football guys coming out, and I think that immediately could make him. That could be a combo. If that happened, that would be something that the Titans haven't seen since, peak Ryan Tannehill and A.J. Brown. And then we finish up with the Commanders, who only had one pick as well at 61. They get Xavier Watts, the very talented safety from Notre Dame, going double up on that defense Offensively, you know, you did your work with the trades, getting Debo Samuel. You'll think anyone, you're going to be cautiously optimistic that Debo and Laramie Tunsil are going to be the needle movers on offense, and you double up on defense in the draft with a defensive lineman and a secondary player. So there you go, fellas. That is a 3-round mock draft. How do you think I did for your favorite team? Let me know in the comment section below. I think I did a pretty good job, but I always like to get your feedback. So when I do future mock drafts, because we're getting to the end, there's not going to be a whole lot more that come. But I always like taking your guys' feedback as best as I can so I can be the one of the first person in human history that makes a perfect mock draft for everyone is happy with the selection. But that'll do it for me today, guys. Thank you very much for watching. As always, if you're first time stopping by, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button. Smash the like button if you enjoyed. Until next time, it's your boy C4. Say peace, I love you. Have a good one.